The sound wasn't a knock. It was the screech of a power drill eating into stripped screws, metal grinding against wood with a violence that made Sarah's teeth ache. She dropped the half-folded laundry, her heart hammering against her ribs. "Who's there?" The words came out weaker than she intended, swallowed by the growing noise outside her front door. "Eviction notice, sweetheart." The voice was muffled but unmistakable. Marcus Dean, her landlord, dripping with that particular brand of cruelty only slumlords seemed to perfect. Sarah lunged for the door handle, but before her fingers could close around it, the entire front door was yanked off its hinges with a violent crack that echoed through the building. The freezing wind of Detroit in December rushed into the living room like an invading army, biting her skin, stealing the warmth from the air in seconds. Standing in the empty doorframe, holding the heavy wooden door like a trophy, Marcus grinned. His teeth looked yellow against the gray December sky, his cheap suit jacket flapping in the wind. Behind him, his contractor was already loading tools into a rusted truck. "You wouldn't leave," Marcus sneered, tossing the door into the truck bed with a clatter that made Sarah flinch. "So I guess you don't need privacy. Or heat. Have a nice night, Sarah. Hope the kid doesn't catch pneumonia." He drove away, his laughter trailing behind the truck's exhaust, leaving a single mother and her 5-year-old son staring at a gaping hole where their safety used to be. From the kitchen, Toby's small voice called out, "Mommy? Why is it so cold?" Sarah's hands were shaking. Not from the cold. Not yet. From rage. From fear. From the crushing weight of absolute helplessness. But what she didn't know, what Marcus Dean couldn't possibly have anticipated, was that Sarah O'Connell worked at Rosie's Diner on 8 Mile. And Rosie's Diner was the favorite breakfast spot of the Iron Sovereigns Motorcycle Club. The same club whose president, Bishop, considered Sarah something like a daughter after she'd spent 2 years making sure his crew always had hot coffee and the best booth in the corner. The same club that was about to teach Marcus Dean what happened when you hurt one of their own. 3 weeks earlier, Sarah had known this was coming. Marcus Dean had bought the building 6 months ago, a 4-unit brownstone in a neighborhood that was gentrifying faster than anyone could afford. The other tenants had already been pushed out through various renovations and necessary repairs that made their apartments unlivable. Sarah was the last holdout, and Marcus was running out of patience. She'd first noticed the change when the heat stopped working in November. The boiler, Marcus claimed, was under repair. That repair was now entering its 4th week, and the temperature inside her apartment hovered somewhere between see your breath and ice forming on the windows. Sarah worked double shifts at Rosie's Diner to pay for space heaters. The electricity bill was crushing her, but it was either that or let Toby freeze. Her son was already fighting a cold that wouldn't quit, his small body shivering even under 3 blankets. "Ms. O'Connell," Marcus had said during his last visit, his voice oily with false sympathy. "I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but I'm converting these units to luxury condos. Market rate for this area is now $2,800 a month. Your current lease, $750, is simply not sustainable." "My lease doesn't expire for another 7 months, Sarah had replied, her voice steady even as her stomach churned. "And rent control. Rent control is a guideline, not a law," Marcus interrupted, his smile never reaching his eyes. "Besides, with the building requiring so many repairs, I'm not sure it's even safe for a child to live here. CPS might be interested to know you're keeping a minor in substandard housing." The threat had hung in the air like poison. Sarah knew the playbook. She'd seen it happen to Mrs. Chun in 3B, to the Rodriguez family in 2A. Marcus would make life unbearable until they left voluntarily, and then he'd flip the units for triple the profit. Legal? Barely. Moral? Not even close. "I'm not leaving," she'd said quietly. "This is our home." Marcus's smile had curdled into something ugly. "We'll see about that." That had been 5 days ago. Sarah pulled extra shifts at Rosie's, serving breakfast to early morning construction workers, truckers, and the occasional biker crew that rumbled in on weekend mornings. The Iron Sovereigns MC had been regulars for as long as she'd worked there, rough-looking men with leather cuts and enough tattoos to stock a museum. But they always tipped well, never caused trouble, and had a strange sort of old-fashioned courtesy about them. Their president, Bishop, was a man in his mid-40s with silver threading through his dark hair and eyes that missed nothing. He'd taken a liking to Sarah when she'd first started, had asked about Toby, Had even brought the kid a toy motorcycle one Christmas. You work too hard, girl, he'd told her more than once. You need help, you ask. Sarah had always smiled and deflected. She didn't want charity. She didn't want to owe anyone. But now, standing in her apartment with no front door and the winter wind howling through the empty frame, she wondered if pride was a luxury she could no longer afford. The first hour after Marcus left was spent in shock. Sarah stood in the living room, staring at the gaping hole where her door had been, her mind refusing to process what had just happened. The hallway was visible, the chipped paint, the flickering overhead light, the stairs leading down to the street. Anyone could walk in. Anyone. Mommy. Toby appeared from his bedroom, clutching his stuffed dinosaur. His face was flushed with fever, his eyes glassy. Why did that man take our door? Sarah forced herself to move. It's a mistake, baby. We're going to fix it. But how? It was 4:30 p.m. on a Tuesday. Every handyman she knew would charge a fortune for emergency service, and she'd already maxed out her credit card buying space heaters. The landlord, the person who should be responsible for this, was the one who'd caused it. She grabbed her phone and dialed 911, her fingers clumsy with cold. 911, what's your emergency? My landlord just removed my front door. I have a 5-year-old child here, and it's freezing outside. I need. Ma'am, is anyone in immediate physical danger? No, but this sounds like a civil dispute. You'll need to contact tenant services or file a complaint with housing court. I can send an officer to take a report, but there's nothing we can do about property disputes. He removed my door, Sarah said, her voice rising. Anyone can walk into my apartment. I understand your frustration, ma'am. An officer will be there within the hour to take a statement. In the meantime, I suggest contacting a lawyer. The line went dead. Sarah wanted to scream. Instead, she grabbed every blanket she could find and started stuffing them into the doorframe. She pushed the sofa across the living room, her back screaming in protest, and wedged it against the opening. She hung a comforter over the gap, securing it with duct tape to the doorframe. It wasn't enough. Wind still whistled through the cracks. The temperature in the apartment was already dropping. By 6 p.m., a police officer had come and gone, taking notes with obvious disinterest. It's a civil matter, ma'am. You'll need to file an injunction. He'd handed her a card for legal aid and left. By 8 p.m., the temperature outside had dropped to 12 degrees Fahrenheit. Inside, Sarah could see her breath. She'd moved Toby into the kitchen, the smallest room, easiest to heat, and surrounded him with every space heater they had. Her electricity meter was probably spinning like a slot machine, but she didn't care. Toby was crying softly, his body shaking despite the blankets. I'm cold, Mommy. I know, baby. I know. Sarah held him close, her own body trembling. Not just from cold. From rage. From fear. From the absolute certainty that if she called CPS for help, they might take Toby away for living in these conditions, even though she was the victim. Around 11 p.m., she heard footsteps in the hallway. Heavy boots. Voices. Yo, check it out. Door's gone. Sarah's blood turned to ice. She grabbed the kitchen knife from the counter, positioned herself between Toby and the doorway. A figure appeared in the gap, a homeless man in layers of tattered clothing, peering inside. Lady, you got any? Get out. Sarah screamed, her voice raw. Get out, or I'm calling the police. The man stumbled backward, disappearing into the darkness. Sarah sank to the floor, still clutching the knife, and finally let herself cry. Silent, shaking sobs that she muffled against her sleeve so Toby wouldn't hear. This was the coldest night of her life. But she had no idea that across town, in a garage that smelled of motor oil and leather, her name had just come up in conversation. Sarah didn't sleep. She couldn't. Every sound from the hallway sent adrenaline spiking through her system. Footsteps, voices, the groan of the building settling. The makeshift barrier of blankets and furniture felt as substantial as tissue paper. Around 2 a.m., another figure appeared. This time, a woman, strung out, eyes hollow, looking for a place to crash or something to steal. Sarah stood up, knife visible, and the woman retreated without a word. By 4 a.m., Toby's fever had spiked. His small body was burning up despite the cold, his breathing shallow and rapid. Sarah pressed a cool cloth to his forehead, whispering prayers she wasn't sure she believed in. She had to get him to a doctor, but the emergency room meant a bill she couldn't pay. It meant missing her shift at Rosie's. It meant Marcus winning. At 5:30 a.m., Sarah made a decision. She bundled Toby in every warm thing she could find, carried him to her neighbor's apartment, Mrs. Kowalski, an elderly Polish woman who'd lived in the building for 40 years, and begged her to watch him for the day. Sweet Jesus. Mrs. Kowalski breathed when she saw the missing door. That bastard. That absolute bastard. I have to work, Sarah said, her voice mechanical. I can't miss another shift, or they'll fire me. Can you please? Of course, child. Of course. Mrs. Kowalski took Toby, her wrinkled hands gentle. You go? I keep him safe. But Sarah, you call someone. Police. Lawyer. Someone. Sarah nodded, knowing it was useless. The police had already dismissed her. Lawyers cost money she didn't have. She was utterly, completely alone. She made it to Rosie's diner at 6 a.m. sharp, her eyes red-rimmed, her hands still shaking. The breakfast rush was just beginning. Construction workers, truckers, early morning joggers seeking coffee and warmth. Sarah moved through her shift like a ghost. She took orders, poured coffee, delivered plates of eggs and bacon with a smile that felt like broken glass cutting her face. By 7:30 a.m., the Iron Sovereigns rolled in. There were 5 of them that morning. Bishop in the lead, followed by Tank, built like his namesake, Welder, silent and scarred, Trigger, who handled club security, and Smokey, the oldest member, with a beard that reached his chest. They took their usual booth in the back corner, and Sarah automatically grabbed the coffee pot. Morning, gentlemen, she said, her voice flat. The usual? Bishop looked up, and his eyes narrowed. Sarah, you look like hell. Rough night, she said shortly, pouring coffee with hands that trembled so badly the liquid sloshed in the cups. Easy there, Tank rumbled, steadying the pot before it spilled. Sarah tried to pull away, tried to maintain her composure, but the simple kindness of that gesture, of someone helping her, even with something so small, shattered the dam she'd been building all night. The coffee pot slipped from her fingers and crashed to the floor. And Sarah O'Connell, who'd survived an abusive ex-husband, who'd raised a child alone for 5 years, who'd worked doubles and triples and never complained, broke down sobbing in the middle of Rosie's diner. Bishop was on his feet instantly, guiding Sarah to the booth before she collapsed. Somebody get a towel for that coffee, he barked at no one in particular. Sarah, look at me. What happened? The diner had gone quiet. Even the cook had stopped flipping eggs. Everyone knew Sarah, the hardest worker in the place, always smiling, never taking breaks. Seeing her fall apart was like watching a building crumble. Sarah couldn't speak through the sobs. She gasped for air, her whole body shaking, and Bishop just waited, one hand on her shoulder, steady and calm. Finally, the words came pouring out. My landlord. He took my door, just ripped it off the hinges. Toby's sick and it's freezing and anyone can walk in and the police won't help and I can't afford a lawyer and I don't know what to do. Wait. Bishop's voice cut through the rambling. Say that again. He took your door? Sarah nodded, wiping her face with her sleeve. Yesterday afternoon. He's been trying to get me to leave, and when I wouldn't, he removed the front door. Left us with nothing. It was 10 degrees last night, and my baby was freezing and... She broke off, unable to continue. The silence in the booth was absolute. Bishop looked at his crew. Tank's massive hands were curled into fists. Welder's jaw was so tight Sarah could see the muscle jumping. Trigger's eyes had gone flat and cold. Smokey was staring at his coffee like it held the answers to the universe. This landlord, Bishop said quietly. He got a name? Marcus Dean. He owns the building on Carpenter Street. I know the place, Smokey said, his voice gravelly. Saw him around. Drives a leased Mercedes. Wears suits that cost more than my bike. Bishop pulled out his phone, fingers moving quickly across the screen. He sent a single text to a group chat, then set the phone down and looked at Sarah. You got work today? Yes, but I can't miss it. I need the money. You're taking the day off. Rosie, Bishop called to the owner. Sarah's got a family emergency. She'll be back tomorrow. Rosie, a tough-as-nails woman in her 60s, waved from behind the counter. No problem, Bishop. Take care of her. I can't afford, Sarah started. Didn't ask, Bishop interrupted. You got somewhere for the kid today? Mrs. Kowalski, my neighbor. Good. He stays there. You're coming with us. Sarah blinked. Where? Bishop's smile was cold enough to frost glass. To fix your door problem. Within minutes, Bishop's phone started buzzing. Replies flooded the group chat. Prospect here. On my way. Diesel checking in. Got the van. Welder Jr. bringing the acetylene torch. On it, boss. Knuckles. Tank cracked his knuckles, a sound like gunshots. We building or breaking? Building, Bishop said. For now. The Iron Sovereign's motorcycle club had 43 full members, 16 prospects, and enough associates to fill a small warehouse. When Bishop sent out the call, they came. By 9 a.m., motorcycles were converging on the club's garage from every corner of Detroit. Harleys, choppers, custom builds. The rumble of engines echoed through the industrial neighborhood like rolling thunder. Sarah sat in the office with a cup of coffee she couldn't drink, watching through the window as men, and a few women, arrived in waves. They weren't all bikers. Some were contractors, electricians, welders, mechanics. People who owed the club favors. People who were family. This is too much, Sarah whispered. I can't ask you to. You didn't ask, Welder said from the doorway. He was cleaning his hands with a rag, preparing his tools. Bishop told us what happened. We don't let people hurt kids. Not in our town. But the door, it's just a door. It's not about the door. That was Tank, ducking his head to fit through the doorway. It's about some rich asshole thinking he can terrorize a woman and child. That shit doesn't fly. Bishop appeared, carrying a blueprint he'd sketched on notebook paper. Sarah, what's the doorframe made of? I don't know. Doesn't matter. We're replacing it. Welder, you bring the steel reinforcement bars. In the van. Good. Tank, you're on crowd control. Neighbors are going to freak when they see us rolling up. Keep it calm. Trigger, you're recording everything. If that bastard landlord shows up, I want video evidence of every word. Got it. Bishop turned to Sarah. This is going to be loud, messy, and probably terrifying for your neighbors. But when we're done, that apartment will be safer than a bank vault. Nobody, and I mean nobody, is getting through that door without your permission. Understood, Sarah nodded, unable to speak past the lump in her throat. Good. Let's ride. The convoy that rolled down Carpenter Street at 10 a.m. looked like something out of an action movie. 23 motorcycles, 2 cargo vans, and a flatbed truck carrying enough steel to build a small bridge. Neighbors came to their windows, watching with wide eyes as the Iron Sovereign's MC took over the street. Tank was the first to pull up to the curb. He cut his engine, and the silence that followed was deafening. He stared at the house number, checking the text from Sarah again. Then he looked at the porch. Holy hell, he muttered. Bishop rolled up beside him on his custom bagger. Is that it? Look at the entrance, boss. Bishop squinted against the morning glare. Where the front door should have been, there was nothing. Just a piece of plywood propped up from the inside, with gaps big enough for a cat to crawl through. He could see the faint glow of a lamp inside, flickering in the wind that was cutting right through the barrier. Bishop didn't get angry often. He was a businessman now, had worked hard to legitimize the club, to build relationships with the community. But seeing that gaping hole, knowing a kid had slept behind that pathetic barrier while it was 10 degrees outside, he felt the old rage, the kind that broke bones, simmering in his chest. He flipped open his phone and called Welder. Bring the heavy-duty gauge steel. We aren't just fixing a door. We're building a damn vault. Sarah appeared in the doorway, looking small and exhausted. Toby was still at Mrs. Kowalski's, and Sarah had come back to let them in, her eyes red from crying. Thank you, she whispered as Bishop approached. Thank you so much. Save it for when we're done, Bishop said gently. Go check on your boy. We've got this. The transformation began. Welder and his apprentice started with the doorframe, ripping out the old wood that Marcus's contractor had damaged. They installed a steel frame, the kind used in commercial buildings, designed to withstand battering rams. Diesel and Knuckles measured and cut a solid steel security door from the flatbed. It was industrial grade, the kind of door you'd find on a jewelry store or a gun shop. 3 inches of reinforced steel with a deadbolt system that could stop anything short of explosives. Tank stood guard on the street, his massive arms crossed, glaring at anyone who looked twice at the operation. A few curious neighbors approached, asking questions. Just doing some repairs for a friend, Tank said mildly. Move along. Smokey set up a portable generator to power the welding equipment. The street filled with the acrid smell of burning metal, the bright flash of acetylene torches, the clang of hammers on steel. Inside, other club members were making improvements Sarah hadn't even asked for. They replaced the broken window latches, installed better insulation around the frames, fixed the radiator that had been under repair for a month. Trigger went through the entire electrical system, replacing faulty wiring that was a fire hazard. "Your landlord's a piece of work," Trigger said, showing Sarah a junction box held together with electrical tape. "This could have killed you." By noon, the door was in place. It was beautiful, if a door could be beautiful. Solid steel, painted a deep charcoal gray, with a peephole at eye level and a deadbolt system that required 2 keys. The frame was reinforced with steel bars that extended into the wall studs. Welder had even added a mail slot that locked from the inside. "Try to kick that in," Welder said with satisfaction. "I dare someone." Sarah stood in her living room, staring at her new door, and burst into tears for the second time that day. But these were different tears. Mrs. Kowalski came over with Toby, who'd been watching from her window. The little boy's eyes went wide. "Mommy, you got a robot door." The bikers laughed, rough, genuine sounds that echoed through the apartment. "That's right, little man," Tank said, crouching down to Toby's level. "This is a fortress now. Nobody gets through this door unless your mama says so." "Cool." Toby touched the steel reverently, then looked up at Tank. "Are you a superhero?" Tank glanced at Bishop, who was grinning. "Something like that, kid." They were packing up the tools when it happened. A silver Mercedes pulled up to the curb, and Marcus Dean stepped out. Marcus was in a good mood. He'd spent the evening at his favorite steakhouse, celebrating with his contractor buddy over martinis. By now, that bitch Sarah should be gone. Either moved out or so broken she'd sign whatever he put in front of her. He could have the unit gutted and renovated by next month, listed by spring. He was looking at a $400,000 profit. Easy. He hummed along to the radio as he drove toward Carpenter Street, mentally calculating his return on investment. Maybe he'd buy a boat. Something sleek and fast, perfect for summer on Lake St. Clair. He was 3 blocks away when he noticed the motorcycles. Lots of motorcycles. What the hell? Marcus slowed the car, frowning. The street was packed with bikes, Harleys, mostly, all gleaming chrome and custom paint jobs. There were vans too, and a flatbed truck, and at least 24 men in leather cuts standing around like they owned the place. Marcus's good mood evaporated. This was his property, his investment. What were these thugs doing here? He parked the Mercedes and got out, straightening his suit jacket. Marcus Dean didn't intimidate easily. He'd dealt with angry tenants before, even the occasional confrontation. He knew how to throw his weight around, how to threaten legal action, how to make people back down. He pushed through the crowd of bikers, ignoring their stares. "Excuse me. Coming through. This is private property." Nobody moved. Marcus reached the porch steps and stopped dead. Where the empty doorframe had been, where he'd planned to lord his power over Sarah, to watch her beg, there was now a door that looked like it belonged on a federal building. Solid steel. Professionally installed. The kind of door that screamed Fort Knox. "What the—" Marcus started, but his voice died as a man stepped out from behind the door. He was tall, maybe 6'2", with silver-streaked hair and eyes that looked like they'd seen things Marcus couldn't imagine. He wore a leather cut with patches that read President and Iron Sovereign's MC. In his hand, he held a welding torch mask, and his expression was absolutely calm. Behind him, at least 20 more bikers formed a wall of leather and muscle. "Can I help you?" the man asked mildly. "Who the hell are you?" Marcus sputtered. "This is my property. What are you doing to my building?" "Your property?" Bishop tilted his head. "Funny. I thought you gave up your rights to this entrance when you illegally removed the door and endangered the life of a minor." "I didn't endanger anyone. I was just— This is a civil matter. You have no right." "No right." Tank stepped forward, and Marcus actually stumbled backward. The man was enormous, easily 6'6", and built like a linebacker. "You left a woman and a sick kid with no door in the middle of winter. In Detroit. At night." I was within my legal—" "Shut up," Bishop said pleasantly. "I'm going to explain something to you, Mr. Dean. This apartment now has a door. A very nice door. Industrial grade. We installed it ourselves because, well, you failed in your duty as a landlord to provide safe housing. You can't just—" "We can. We did." Bishop smiled. "Now, this door cost us approximately $3,200 in materials and labor. Since you created the need for it, we're going to bill you for the installation. Marcus's face went purple. I'm not paying for that. Oh, I think you will. Bishop pulled out his phone, scrolled through some photos. See, while we were here, we noticed some interesting code violations. Faulty wiring, broken fire escapes, mold in the basement, asbestos in the ceiling tiles. Should I go on? You're bluffing. Am I? Bishop turned the phone around, showing photos of exposed wires, crumbling infrastructure, black mold blooming in corners. My buddy Trigger here used to be a city inspector. He's got friends at the department. One phone call, and your entire building gets condemned. Your $400,000 renovation? Dead in the water. Marcus felt his stomach drop. You can't. Try me. Bishop's smile vanished. Here's what's going to happen. You're going to sign a document stating that Sarah O'Connell's lease is valid and binding for the full remaining term. You're going to drop any eviction proceedings. You're going to repair the heat in her apartment within 24 hours. And you're going to stay the hell away from her and her son. And if I don't, Bishop gestured to the crowd of bikers behind him. Then we have a problem. See, Sarah works at Rosie's diner. That makes her family. And we take care of our family. Marcus looked around. 30 bikers stared back at him. Some were smiling. None looked friendly. He recognized the look in their eyes. He'd seen it before in men who'd done serious time. Men who didn't give a damn about consequences. His hand moved toward his phone. I'm calling the police. Go ahead, Bishop said. Ask for Officer Martinez. He's already here. A police cruiser was parked at the end of the block, and a uniformed cop leaned against it, watching. He gave Marcus a small wave. Martinez grew up 3 blocks from here, Bishop explained. We went to school together. He knows Sarah, knows her kid, and he's very interested in your illegal eviction tactics. Marcus's hand fell. His mouth worked, but no sound came out. There's also the matter of your taxes, Smokey added from the sidelines. Funny thing about cash under the table rental income. IRS gets real interested when they hear about it. This is extortion. No, Bishop said calmly. This is consequences. You fucked with the wrong person, Mr. Dean. Now you get to learn what that costs. He pulled a paper from his jacket and thrust it at Marcus. Sign. Marcus Dean had built his empire on intimidation. He'd spent 20 years buying distressed properties, pushing out tenants, flipping buildings for profit. He knew every loophole, every legal gray area, every way to make someone's life hell without technically breaking the law. But standing on Carpenter Street, surrounded by iron sovereigns, he realized he'd finally met people who didn't care about technicalities. I'm not signing anything without my lawyer, Marcus said, trying to inject authority into his voice. Bishop shrugged. Fine. Call him. We'll wait. Marcus pulled out his phone with shaking hands and dialed his attorney, a sleazy piece of work named Goldstein who specialized in landlord-tenant disputes. Marcus, what can I do for you? I need you at the Carpenter Street property. Now, there's a situation. What kind of situation? Marcus glanced at the wall of bikers. Just get here. Fast. 20 minutes later, a BMW pulled up and a man in an expensive suit climbed out. Howard Goldstein was everything Marcus aspired to be. Rich, arrogant, utterly convinced of his own superiority. Mr. Dean, Goldstein said, surveying the scene with obvious distaste. What's all this? These people have installed a door on my property without permission and are trying to extort me. Goldstein's eyes narrowed. He approached Bishop with the kind of swagger that said he'd face down tougher opposition. I'm Mr. Dean's attorney. Whatever you think you're doing here. Read this, Bishop said, handing him the document. Goldstein skimmed it, his expression shifting from arrogant to concerned. You're aware this is essentially blackmail? No, Trigger said, stepping forward with a tablet. This is documentation. Video evidence of your client illegally removing a door from a residence occupied by a minor. Photos of code violations throughout the building. Testimony from neighbors about harassment and intimidation. We're not blackmailing anyone. We're offering your client a way to avoid multiple felony charges. Goldstein's face went pale as Trigger showed him the tablet. There was video of Marcus's contractor removing the door while Sarah begged them to stop. Photos of the building's violations, each time stamped and geotagged. Written statements from Mrs. Kowalski and other tenants about Marcus's illegal eviction tactics. Where did you get this? Goldstein whispered. Concerned citizens, Bishop said. Funny how when you terrorize a neighborhood, people start paying attention. Now, your client can sign this agreement, which is entirely reasonable and simply holds him to the terms of his existing lease and local housing codes. Or we can take all of this to the city, the police, and the IRS. Your call. Goldstein pulled Marcus aside, whispering urgently. Marcus's face went from purple to white to red, cycling through emotions like a slot machine. Finally, he turned back to Bishop. The door, Marcus said tightly. I want it removed. It's my property. Actually, a new voice said, it's not. Sarah had emerged from the building, holding a piece of paper. I looked it up. Michigan law says tenants can make security improvements to their residence if the landlord fails to provide adequate safety measures. Since you removed my door, which was documented by police report, I had every right to install a new one. And since these kind gentlemen volunteered their labor, I don't owe you a dime. Marcus stared at her like she'd grown a second head. You can't. I can. Sarah's voice was stronger than Bishop had ever heard it. And I did. My lease is valid. I'm paid up through June. And if you come near me or my son again, I will file for a restraining order and sue you for every code violation in this building. You don't have money for a lawsuit. She does now, Bishop said. Iron Sovereign's MC has a legal defense fund. We're happy to cover her attorney fees. It was a bluff. The club's legal fund was mostly for members facing bogus charges, but Marcus didn't need to know that. Goldstein gripped Marcus's arm. Sign the paper. But sign it, or you'll lose everything. They have you dead to rights on child endangerment at minimum. The code violations alone will shut you down. Sign the paper. Marcus's hand shook as he took the pen Bishop offered. The document was simple, an acknowledgement that Sarah's lease was valid, that he would cease all eviction efforts, that he would repair the building to code within 30 days. He signed. Bishop witnessed it. So did Officer Martinez, who'd wandered over from his cruiser. Pleasure doing business with you, Bishop said, taking the signed document. Now get the hell off this street. Marcus and Goldstein retreated to the Mercedes and drove away, tires squealing. The moment they were gone, the bikers erupted in cheers. Toby, who'd been watching from Mrs. Kowalski's window, came running out. Did you beat the bad man? He asked Tank. Tank grinned. We sure did, little man. The rest of that afternoon took on a surreal quality. Officer Martinez came by officially to take a report, documenting the signed agreement and inspecting the building's violations. This is bad, he told Sarah. You could have died from that wiring. Or the kid could have been poisoned by the mold. You want me to file charges? Sarah hesitated, looking at Bishop. Up to you, Bishop said quietly. We got what we needed. He can't touch you now. But if you want him in jail. Sarah thought about Toby, about the months of stress and fear, about sleeping with a knife because she couldn't protect her child. No, I just want to live in peace. But I want everything he promised. Heat, repairs, all of it. Martinez nodded. I'll make sure the city inspector comes by weekly until it's done. He misses a deadline, he gets fined. He harasses you again, he gets arrested. Thank you, Sarah whispered. Martinez tipped his hat. Thank your friends. They're the ones who made this happen. As the sun started to set, the bikers showed no signs of leaving. Instead, Tank fired up a portable grill he'd pulled from one of the vans. Smokey produced a cooler full of beer. Someone set up speakers, playing classic rock. It turned into a block party. Neighbors who'd been watching nervously from their windows started trickling out, drawn by the smell of grilling meat and the infectious energy of celebration. Mrs. Kowalski brought out a tray of pierogi. The Rodriguez family, who'd moved back in after Marcus's eviction attempt failed, contributed tamales. Sarah found herself sitting on her new front steps, her fortress door propped open, watching Toby run around with the other neighborhood kids. Bishop sat down beside her, handing her a soda. You okay? He asked. I don't know, Sarah admitted. I still can't believe this is real. That door it's incredible. You needed it. We provided it. But why? Sarah turned to look at him. You barely know me. I've just been your waitress for 2 years. Why would you do all this? Bishop was quiet for a moment, watching the kids play. My daughter would be about your age, he said finally. If she'd lived. Died when she was 16, drunk driver. Her mom was a single parent for most of those years, and I saw how hard it was. How people took advantage of her because she was alone. He looked at Sarah, his eyes sad but warm. You work hard. You take care of your kid. You never ask for handouts. When I see someone like you getting crushed by a piece of shit like Marcus Dean, yeah, I'm going to do something about it. That's what the club is for. We're not just about bikes and leather. We're about protecting our community. Sarah felt tears building again. I can never repay you. Don't want repayment. Just want you to be safe. Bishop stood, offering her his hand. Come on. Let's get you some food. You look like you haven't eaten in days. The party went on until nearly 10 p.m., long past Toby's bedtime. But Sarah didn't have the heart to take him inside. He was so happy, laughing with the other kids, wearing Tank's club bandana like a cape. Finally, as the temperature dropped and the crowd began to thin, Sarah carried her drowsy son inside. The apartment was warm. Someone had fixed the heat while she wasn't looking. The new door gleamed in the hallway light, solid and permanent. Bishop was the last to leave. You got my number, he said. Anything happens, anything at all, you call me. I will. Thank you, Bishop, for everything. He nodded and headed for his bike. The rumble of engines filled the street one last time, and then the Iron Sovereigns were gone, leaving behind only the smell of exhaust and grilled meat. Sarah locked her new door, 3 separate locks, each one clicking into place with reassuring solidity, and looked around her apartment. For the first time in months, she felt safe. The next morning, Sarah woke to pounding on her fortress door. For one terrifying moment, she thought Marcus had come back. But then she heard a familiar voice. City Inspector. Mr. Dean called for an emergency inspection. Sarah opened the door, which took 3 keys and 2 deadbolts. She loved it, to find a harried-looking man in a city uniform holding a clipboard. Sarah O'Connell? He asked. Yes. I'm Inspector Williams. I'm here to verify repairs ordered by the housing court. He looked at his clipboard, confused. But according to my records, you only filed your complaint yesterday. How did this get expedited? I have friends, Sarah offered. Williams stepped inside and began his inspection. Sarah watched nervously as he checked the electrical panel, rewired, the radiator, fully functional, the windows, sealed, and finally the door. Holy hell, Williams breathed, running his hand over the steel. This is commercial grade. Where did you get this? Friends installed it, Sarah said. After the landlord removed the previous door, Williams's expression darkened. He what? Sarah showed him the police report. The photos Trigger had taken, everything. Williams's face went from shock to furious. Ms. O'Connell, this building is a disaster. I'm going to need to do a full inspection. Do you mind if I check the other units? They're empty right now. Marcus was trying to renovate. We'll see about that. Williams spent 3 hours going through the building, taking photos, making notes, shaking his head. When he finally emerged, his clipboard was covered in violation citations. This place should be condemned, he told Sarah. The foundation has cracks. The roof is leaking. The basement is full of black mold. Mr. Dean is looking at about $200,000 in mandatory repairs before he can legally rent any unit in this building. Sarah's jaw dropped. 200,000. At least. And he's got 30 days to complete them or the building gets red tagged. Williams handed her a card. You have rights, Ms. O'Connell. Strong ones. I'd suggest you exercise them. That afternoon, Sarah's phone rang. Unknown number. Hello. MS. O'Connell, this is Howard Goldstein. We met yesterday. Sarah's grip tightened on the phone. I remember. I'm calling on behalf of Mr. Dean. He's reconsidering his position regarding your tenancy. Reconsidering? He'd like to offer you a settlement. Cash payment, relocation assistance, and forgiveness of your remaining lease, if you agree to vacate within 60 days. Sarah should have been tempted. The offer was probably generous, enough to move somewhere better, to get a fresh start. But the thought of Marcus Dean winning, of him getting what he wanted after everything he'd done. No, Sarah said. I'm sorry. No, I'm not leaving. My lease runs through June, and I intend to stay through June. After that, I'll decide if I want to renew. Ms. O'Connell, please be reasonable. Mr. Dean is facing significant repair costs. That's not my problem. He should have maintained the building legally in the first place. Sarah felt a surge of confidence she'd never experienced before. I'm staying. And if Mr. Dean tries anything at all, I'll contact my friends at the Iron Sovereigns MC and my friends at the city inspector's office. Are we clear? Silence. Crystal clear, Ms. O'Connell. The line went dead. Sarah sat down, her heart racing. She'd just told off a lawyer. She'd just refused a buyout. She'd just stood her ground. It felt amazing. Winter melted into spring, and life on Carpenter Street changed. Marcus Dean completed the required repairs, barely, and with much complaining. But he completed them. The heat worked. The electricity was up to code. The mold was remediated. Inspector Williams made sure of it, showing up weekly with his clipboard and his citations. The other tenants started moving back in. The Rodriguez family returned to 2A. A young couple took 3B. Mrs. Kowalski and 4A had been there all along, but she seemed happier now, more secure. The building formed a community, and at the center of it was that steel door. It became a landmark. The fortress, people called it. Kids would dare each other to knock on it. Sarah always answered with a smile. Delivery drivers used it as a reference point. 2 buildings down from the steel door on Carpenter. Bishop and the Iron Sovereigns checked in regularly. They'd swing by on Sunday mornings, bringing donuts for Toby and coffee for Sarah. Tank taught the neighborhood kids basic motorcycle safety. Smokey helped Mrs. Kowalski fix her ancient Buick. Welder installed better locks on all the units, free of charge. The MC had adopted the building. Sarah went back to work at Rosie's, but something had changed. She walked taller now, smiled more. When customers were rude, she didn't shrink. She handled it with calm professionalism, knowing she had a whole biker club in her corner if she needed it. Toby thrived. His cold cleared up once the apartment was properly heated. He grew 2 inches and started kindergarten, where he proudly told everyone that his mom had the coolest door in Detroit and that his friends were the motorcycle heroes. One Saturday in May, Sarah was planting flowers in the window box outside her apartment when a familiar Mercedes pulled up. Her heart stopped. But it wasn't Marcus who got out. It was a for sale sign installer. "Sorry to bother you," the man said. "Just putting up a sign. Building's going on the market." Sarah blinked. "The whole building?" "Yeah. Owner's selling. Something about moving to Florida. Wants out of the landlord business." After the installer left, Sarah called Bishop. "He's selling?" Bishop said thoughtfully. "Interesting. I'm worried about who might buy it. What if it's someone worse than Marcus? Let me make some calls." 3 days later, Bishop called back. "How do you feel about the Iron Sovereigns MC owning your building?" Sarah almost dropped the phone. "What? We've been looking for an investment property. Somewhere to house members, maybe set up a legitimate business on the ground floor, motorcycle shop, maybe a cafe. The numbers work. And we'd keep it affordable for you and the other tenants." Interested, Sarah started laughing. She couldn't help it. "You want to be my landlord? Better us than some out-of-state investment firm, right?" "When you put it that way, yes. Absolutely yes." The sale went through in June. The Iron Sovereigns MC purchased the building for $850,000, well below market value, because Marcus was desperate to get out from under the repair costs and the constant harassment from Inspector Williams. The transformation was immediate. The ground floor became Sovereign Steel Motorcycles, a custom bike shop run by Welder and his crew. The upper floors remained residential, with rents frozen at current levels for existing tenants. The MC even renovated the basement into a community room where residents could hang out, do laundry, or host gatherings. Sarah's rent didn't change. Her lease was honored, and she had the best landlords in Detroit, bikers who fixed things immediately, who kept the building secure, who treated residents like family. On the day the new sign went up, property of Iron Sovereigns MC, the neighborhood threw a party. Not because they were scared of bikers, but because they knew these particular bikers would protect them. And in the center of the celebration, standing proud on her front steps, was Sarah O'Connell and her fortress door. 3 years later, Sarah stood in the doorway of her apartment, watching Toby race down the stairs to catch the school bus. He was 8 now, confident and happy, wearing a miniature leather vest that Tank had made for him. No club patches, but plenty of cool designs. "Bye, Mom," he called. "Love you. Love you too, baby. Be good." The apartment had changed. Sarah had saved enough to buy furniture that wasn't secondhand, to paint the walls cheerful colors, to make it a home instead of just a shelter. The steel door remained, polished and proud, a permanent reminder of the night her life had changed. She worked at Rosie's still, but now she was a manager. Bishop had vouched for her when the owner retired, and Sarah had bought into the partnership. She was part owner of a successful diner, with steady income and benefits and a future. Marcus Dean had moved to Florida, where he promptly got into trouble for similar slumlord tactics and was facing multiple lawsuits. Sarah had heard through the grapevine that he'd filed for bankruptcy. She felt no sympathy. The Iron Sovereigns had become fixtures in the neighborhood, respected, even loved. The motorcycle shop was thriving. The building on Carpenter Street was always full, with a waiting list of people who wanted to live in the fortress building. Sarah's phone buzzed. A text from Bishop, Sunday breakfast. Rosie's. Usual booth. Kids welcome. She smiled and replied, "We'll be there." Life was good. Not perfect. There were still bills to pay, challenges to face, moments of stress. But Sarah faced them all with the knowledge that she wasn't alone. She had a community. She had friends who'd literally built her a fortress when she needed one. And she had that door. Every time Sarah locked it at night. 3 keys, 2 deadbolts, solid steel that would outlast the building itself. She remembered the coldest night of her life. The night she thought she'd lost everything. The night that changed everything. Sometimes the best armor isn't something you build yourself. Sometimes it's something others build for you, because they refuse to let you face the world alone. As Sarah headed out for her shift, she ran her hand along the steel surface of her door one more time. It was cool and solid and real. Her fortress. Her home. Her reminder that even in the darkest winter, there are people who bring warmth. She smiled and headed downstairs, ready for whatever came next. In Detroit, there's a building on Carpenter Street with a door that looks like it belongs on Fort Knox. Ask anyone in the neighborhood about it, and they'll tell you the story, how a landlord tried to terrorize a single mom, and how the Iron Sovereigns Motorcycle Club showed him what real power looks like. They'll tell you about Bishop and Tank and Welder, about the night a community came together, about justice served not in a courtroom, but on a cold winter street. And if you're very lucky, you might meet Sarah O'Connell herself, who'll invite you in for coffee and introduce you to her son Toby, the kid who grew up knowing that sometimes the scariest-looking people are the ones who'll protect you the fiercest. The steel door still stands. And behind it, a family lives in safety. Because that's what real strength looks like.